Okay, excellent. Could I take 1 minute to write a few things down, or do you want this to be like spur of the moment? I mean, like, I can talk while I write too. It's just like, I just want to write down what the categories are, honestly. Okay, but you just explained to my nature I'm going to feel inclined to pursue all three. But it's true, I want to pursue all three. It's at this point in the interview that I'd like to point out the substances on the table, because I tell you this began long ago. We have here the Kenmore series mason jar. This is the small one here though. This is the Atlas series 12 ounce mason jar going for 300 points, haha! Then we have the Lagunitas California IPA, an excellent blend of hops, a little bit malty. I'm just kidding, there's no malt. Fuck malt. Malt's an asshole. Malt is such an asshole. Oh yeah? I'm a big fucking fat ass. The camera takes off 50 pounds, 90 pounds, I weigh 300 points, haha! Okay, so I was like listening and thinking while you were explaining the categories, but could you just tell me what the three are again? She's fucked up. She's so fucked up. Oh, yes, that was the other one. That word will inspire me to buy property. Alright, let's get started. Could I do first time fully inhabited? In that 4 years, I started, I slept with a woman for the first time and had my first like real big like crazy orgasm, and that was fucking awesome. And it totally changed everything again, you know, and I started exploring my body in different ways again and what it meant to feel good with myself and with another person and all those things. And okay, so the work, so the show that I was talking about that I did earlier, another part of it is about female ejaculation, and I feel like that's part of the way that I've reclaimed my body in some ways. So realizing that I could ejaculate as a woman was a pretty huge step in me reclaiming my body, because for me, men, when we talk about orgasms, for me we talk about this sort of physical manifestation of their orgasm, but we don't talk about that with women's orgasms unless you're looking at porn, and then it's speculated as to whether or not it's cum or if it's pee or if it's whatever, because God forbid a woman actually have an orgasm with some sort of physical remnant to it, because that's what men do, that's not what women do. Or there's this mystique around the female orgasm, like, does the G-spot really exist? No, it doesn't. Neither does the clit, actually. I don't know if you knew that. So when I started having like this physical manifestation of my orgasm after being pre-orgasmic and also dealing with difficulties in coming to understand myself sexually, I felt that was me sort of taking back in some ways the years of me not being able to know my body or trust my body or feel my body without feeling shame, or to experience my body as a pleasure center. And there were people that I slept with who were like freaked out by it or grossed out by it or whatever. And there were a lot of people who loved it, right? Still to this day, like whatever. But in the process of figuring it out, like some people are gonna hate this and think it's gross, it was my way of being like, you know what? Fuck you. Like, if you can't handle what my body does when it feels good. I always felt really heavy growing up because, I mean, I'm Asian, but I'm like a really big Asian. And growing up in Hong Kong, everyone was like this tall and like this skinny. And I remember going into stores with my mom and I'd be like, oh, I like that shirt. And she'd be like, that's never gonna fit you. Or she'd be like, excuse me, do you have an extra, extra large? And sometimes I'd get the largest size and that wouldn't even fit. But yeah, that's basically how I grew up, is kind of thinking like I was always too big to be where I was. And then I come to the US and I'm average, right? Which is great, but I think it's always sort of been stuck in the back of my head that I'm too big to be who I am. But yeah, I mean, I identify as an Asian American woman. I didn't really think about my race until I was made to think about it. I think it was my sophomore year of college and there was a hate crime surrounding some Korean Americans and I was really upset. And I was like, well, why am I upset? It didn't happen to me. And then my roommate was like, well, why are you upset? It didn't happen to you. And I was like, you wouldn't understand, you're white. So it was this moment for me where I realized that I was upset because it was my racial group. And I realized that I wasn't a person, I was a person and part of a group. And I think that's what people talk about, is like white privilege, is like realizing that you're an individual, whereas people of color often come to the realization that they're not a person until because there are these barriers and these prejudices that kind of get in the way when you're a person of color. So once I had the language for that and that kind of understanding, it definitely changed my perspective of who I was, you know, and then I started dating my husband, and I would always say to him, like, wouldn't it just be easier if you were dating a white girl? So you wouldn't have to deal with these issues that I have, being like angry or being upset or being sensitive to where I am, because if I'm the only Asian in the room, I'm like, oh, I'm the only Asian, you know? Or just certain things you don't think about if you're the majority. So, yeah, but, I mean, you do what you do. I'm so shy, this is gonna be so hard. I'm gonna start with the first one. I have the perfect Mimi body. Perfect. I have the perfect body for a grandmother because my grandson, he loves my boobies, and he loves my thighs, and my upper arms, and my stomach, everything's soft. And so I watch him with his mom, and he loves the same things on her. And so I told him I was going exercising, working out, and trying to lose a little bit of weight, and he said, "Don't do that, Mimi, your boobies will go away." So a 2-year-old boy is obsessed with my boobies. Why is he so obsessed with boobies? And I'm watching him play with his mom, and I say, "What are you doing?" And he says, "These are my boobie pillows." And it all makes sense. When he comes to me, he wants me soft. And I thought, that's what it means to be loved. I mean, those are the same parts that his grandfather likes. And I used to feel badly because I felt like they were too big, and now I feel like I don't give a fuck, you know? If my boobies or my butt or my tush are too big, that's okay. If it's good enough for the people that I love, this body, then it's great for them. I feel like, finally, at 56, I love the body that I have. A lot of times people will talk, other trans women will talk about like, well, I mean, we were all guys here at some point. And like, that was never really true for me. And I remember now what I got distracted from earlier. I was really androgynous at best, and so I did not transition in that way. And other trans women tend to assume that all women transition in the way that they did. I don't come from a background of secrecy about my identity. I didn't have to like start the agonizing process of growing out my hair, like none of that stuff. I didn't have to learn how to put on my makeup or any of that. I learned how to put on my makeup with other girls when I was 13. It was totally normal. It's when I started shaving my legs and doing my eyebrows, you know. It was normal except for that I was like, you know, hella goth. So otherwise normal. It wasn't abnormal in that I learned as a male person learns. It was abnormal because I was a little weirdo. It's funny, people regularly ask me how I came out. I didn't have a good relationship with my dad before he died, and people always say like, oh, did he not accept you? And it's like, wow, no, he did not notice. Like nobody noticed. Like my mother didn't notice. Like any deliberate changes that I made to how I presented myself, I mean, I couldn't get people to notice a fucking haircut. And I mean, it wasn't like, and no one could tell. It was just like, no one is going to question it because it seemed so normal. You know, particularly because I wasn't always in dresses with red lipstick on, it was just like, that girl is fat and weird and we like her. Sometimes. I thought I did the most important thing. and that was work to try and support my family. And unfortunately, in supporting them and working that hard, I ended up losing them. And all I have to show for it was 3 wonderful children, of course, a second ex-wife, and a lot of pain. Limited mobility and being handicapped. I had to learn how to be a handicapped person. It doesn't just come to you. Oh, okay, today I'm now handicapped, so let's move on from here. It's a learning process. I mentioned before there are certain things that I know not to do because I know what the reaction will be, how my body will react to it. Somebody asked me if I could run. Yeah, I could run. A lion's chasing me or something, I'm gonna run, but if the lion doesn't kill me, I'd end up paying for it a lot. Prison. Because I have to do what it will allow me. I don't have the reign on it, it has the reign on me because I can't control aspects of it. I force it to do certain things like go to work. It's not a lot of hours or anything, but I force it to do that. But I can't push too much or else it gets to a point where I can't do anything now. Unfortunately, life didn't ask me what I wanted, so the whole marriage fell apart. It's not what I wanted. To this day, it's not what I wanted, but she's remarried and living out in California now. It sounds happy, so I'm happy for her, but if it were up to me, that's not the way it would be, even today, so. So in middle school, my nickname was Duff, which stands for Designated Ugly Fat Friend. And so I knew pretty much from 6th grade on that I was completely worthless when it came to like sexual desirability, and I was okay with that because I don't know why I was okay with that. I think I needed to be okay with that in order to just like move through puberty. But I really struggled with my body back then. I used to fantasize about taking giant scissors and just cutting off my fat rolls. Like I would be in math class daydreaming about taking scissors and cutting it off and how good that would feel. Freeing myself up, this thin woman trapped inside of me. So yeah, moving into high school, I knew that I was completely undesirable, and then I was lucky enough to meet my high school boyfriend, who was wonderful to me. And with him it was always, you have a wonderful personality, and you're a fantastic person, and I love you despite your body. And I just remember thinking at the time, what an amazing thing that is, right? Like, you have this handicap, but I'm gonna love you despite it. And I just remember thinking how fucking romantic that was, and now, like, God, he loved me despite my body? That's horrible. Like, now if somebody said, I love you despite your body, I'd write a poem about it. And then a boyfriend that I had when I was living in South Africa, with him it was always, I love you, and I love your body and your stomach. It's big, and when I look at you, I think about your potential to give birth and to be a mother, and I love that about you. And at the time, I was like, wow, that's the new most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. And now, like, well, fuck that. Like, my body's not for you, and I'm so much more than just a baby maker, and I don't know if it's possible for anyone to genuinely be attracted to my body, but now I'm not willing to put up with the bullshit excuses, you know? I don't know if it's possible for anyone to genuinely be attracted to my body. I don't know. It's a really sad thing to realize. Yeah, he was the closest that I ever came to being in a relationship with someone who was genuinely attracted to my body, but I really pushed her into being honest with me, and I was like, there was never a time when you knew that I was fat and had to like overcome that in your mind. And she was like, well, to be honest, when we first started dating, I was aware that you were overweight, and part of me wondered what my family would think, me dating a fat person, and I was insecure about that. And it was this crazy moment for me where I was like, she is the sweetest, most wonderful human being, and she's so fuck the status quo and so queer in every sense of her being, and even this person sees my weight as a handicap or something to overcome, you know? So now when I say I don't think it's possible for anyone to genuinely be attracted to my body, I call on her. And I think even her, you know? I think the one thing that keeps me like hopeful is that I do think it's possible over time for someone to genuinely be attracted to me because I'm an amazing person and have a fantastic personality. But I don't think it's possible for anyone to see me and think, wow, you know? I've never said that out loud, I don't think. I wasn't gonna cry. I guess I never really claimed my body until I was 19, which is a strange thing to say, that you don't claim your body when there's so much you don't get to claim as a black person in this fucked up country that we live in. And I think part of that had to do with me being molested as a child. Part of the psychological abuse that I want to say my tormentors, because for me, in my head, if it happens one time, it's a rapist, but if it happens repeatedly, it becomes a tormentor. You know, like you're sexually abusing me and you're tormenting me. It got to a point where I tried to commit suicide one time. That's another poem that I'm writing about this. Tricky. So I always really thought of my body as something for other people to have and not something for me to really have as my own. And I guess I never really started to claim my body until I started having sex on my own free will when no one was commanding sex from me. Because even when I was in relationships at that time, it was mostly based on me pleasing other people by whatever they wanted from me, from my body, from my person. That's what I would do, without any type of consideration for what I wanted or what I needed from the sexual experience. It just did not register in my head that I was supposed to be enjoying the experience too, until my girlfriend in college. Her name, please don't use her name. She, you know, I told her about everything that happened to me growing up. She knew that I was bisexual. She was fine with it. She was like, well, if you're in a relationship with me, you're in a relationship with me. And I think that's when I kind of realized that it was okay for me to be exactly who I was. And I really appreciate her for that because you know, she really made me work to have sex with her, which was great because I never had to. And she asked me what was some of the things that I was forced to do growing up, and she slowly started making me do those things. And like especially I had a real mental block me giving oral sex to a female, because when I was sexually abused by a woman, that was one of the things that she used to force me to do. And even still, like I have to really like you for me to go there. And she, you know, she was an excellent instructor. You know, she was always like a little to the left, a little to the right. You know, she really talked me through it, and she was like, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna do it right. And I remember the first time she orgasmed in my mouth, and I was like, what's going on? And she's like, nothing, just keep on going. So that was funny. And then we slowly worked on to me penetrating her, and it was a beautiful thing. And I'm really thankful for her for that, because I can say that she's the first person I actually wanted to have sex with. And that's when I really started to claim my body and claim me, I guess, being that bold, and to claim me being horny and being like, you know what, I want to have sex. I want to have sex with you. And now, even when I'm in relationships, it's like, what's that TLC song? I'm not too proud to beg. If I need it in the morning or the middle of the night. Yeah. Not too proud to beg. Not at all. I'm gonna have to write her a thank you note. Sexuality is definitely another area where it's changed and shifted over time because of my body's form. Like, I'm a blonde girl with big boobs and a big butt, and I always talk about that today in terms of how it impacts how my students see me, but at the time it instantly made me, when I was 11, 12, 13, into a sexual person long before I felt that for myself, you know? Crushes on boys, sure, but seeing myself as a sexual being was something that was kind of thrown on me, and then something that I really felt like I sort of had to take the mantle up on, or else it was too shameful. And I wonder about that, like how differently things would have gone if maybe I developed at a normal rate. Like, would I have had an eating disorder? Probably. But I wonder about that, like how differently things would have gone if maybe I hadn't had this period of time where I was just constantly being sexualized. And like, I remember I was in a play in the 6th grade, and the part was not written for me, but when the woman that wrote the play met me, and this is a play written for children, set in the 1920s in a nightclub. And I played a nightclub singer, and I forget my name, but it was some ridiculous name like Betty Terrapin or something ridiculous. And I had on this blue sequin dress, which would have been really cool today. I wish I'd kept that. But I played a nightclub singer, and there was a line in it that was like, oh, she's got a voice like an angel, but a body built for sin. And like, I didn't even really know what that meant. Like, I knew that it was sort of dirty, but I didn't connect what that meant about me and what that meant about my body, and why the woman that wrote the play then met me and was like, oh, she's perfect. At like 11, 12 years old, I was already being very like consciously sexualized, and like, that's just a small example, and like not one that was meant with anything hurtful, but I wonder about how differently my process of getting to be at peace with my body would have gone if it hadn't gone through this period of time where I was just constantly being sexualized. And I think all girls go through that at some extent. And it's really unfortunate, because that's just how we decide to make girls women, is to make them feel ashamed about the fact that they are women. We decided to try and have another child. We were finally at a place where we were ready to do that, and just recently I conceived. And I was gonna go do this residency, and let's see, I was 14 weeks pregnant, and I was having a really hard time thinking I was gonna be this fatty, preggy lady, gonna go do my thing, you know, especially when you're 14 weeks pregnant. Unless you tell anyone you're pregnant, you don't look pregnant yet. And so I was just feeling like a fat, preggy lady. And it's okay to, you're not fat and preggy. Women can be pregnant. People can be pregnant. It's okay. And just before I left, I miscarried. And it was way into it. I mean, it wasn't like a little miscarriage. Like, my body is really pregnant here, and I've really lived through a lot of nausea, and I've really gained not tons of weight, but some weight, and now this thing that I thought I kind of had to apologize for, I don't have it anymore. But I actually have a pregnant body, and now I can't even say I'm pregnant, you know, that's why I'm like this. Not that I'm even offended, so I don't. And so now I'm having this incredibly deep relationship with my own body in grief, and what do I do? What do I do? How do I go about that? How do I feel about it? And every day I'm bleeding a little bit, because that's what you do after you miscarry, is you just kind of continue to bleed. And it wasn't like I was gushing or anything, but here I am having this private relationship to my own body and grief and blood, and for the first time was looking at my body in the mirror in a way that I'd never looked at my body in the mirror before, and I was like, look at your beautiful body. You know, look at this body that held that baby, and nobody in this room knows that that's what this body was doing, and your body can still do all this other shit, you know? I can still teach these students, I can still do a fucking handstand for a long time, but it wasn't even like it was my own body, you know? And 2 weeks after dancing a whole lot, it feels more like my own familiar body, but it was still a body that I wanted so much to do, that had so much value to me, to be growing a baby. And I felt like I got to kind of the first of a really deep place without apology. You know, it's even like, you're fat. It's like, that's not fat. This isn't fat. What is this? This is a nest. This is a home for a baby. This is what your body can do, and it didn't end up doing it, but you have no apology for how you are. No apology whatsoever. I mean, what a privilege it is for your body to alter for a project larger than its own body image from what it can do, you know? And I suppose I felt the irony of wanting your body to represent the heroic things it can do, and that should look thin. But pregnancy is a heroic thing that your body can do, and it looks different. It doesn't necessarily look not thin, it just organizes itself differently to do this heroic act, and I felt like in honoring this life that didn't get to be, but that was in me for a little while, there was just no room to hate it. There was just no room. There was only room to really glory in what this body could do, I think. That's the end of that story. I remember whenever I first developed stretch marks, oh my God, it was bad. Because I was like, what are these worms that are on my body? What are these termites that are crawling under my skin? And I was like, how do you get rid of this? And I just remember I was like religiously putting like cocoa butter on them, because that's what they tell you to do, is just put cocoa butter on it. It'll go away. That shit don't go away. And so if you lose weight, you get them. And if you gain weight, you get them. So it's like either way, you're gonna get them. And I was like, there has to be a solution to this epidemic. And so I got every form of cocoa butter you could think of. I got the cocoa butter in the stick. I got the big ass jar of cocoa butter lotion. I got the small jar of cocoa butter. Anything you could think of to get rid of stretch marks, derma, anything you could think of to get rid of this. And I was just like, well, I guess this just ain't gonna happen. And it just never happened, you know? And it was crazy because, you know, I used to think that I was the only person with stretch marks. Like, it's like whenever you first get your period, right? You're like, oh, I'm obviously the only person who has my period. But it's like, every woman around you experiences this shit, you know? And I just wish it weren't such a taboo thing for us to talk about, you know? And I wish we didn't hide it. You know, it's back to what we were talking about earlier about societal norms and what people perceive as feminine versus not. And it wasn't until I was talking to some of my friends and they were like, girl, or you know what it was? We were at the beach. And they had their bathing suits on, and their stretch marks was like on fleek. And I was like, so you're just not embarrassed by that? And they're like, girl, for what? Like, these are my stripes. And I was like, yeah, these are my stripes. And it was this moment where I was like, you're just a woman, you know? And then these movements started happening, and a friend showed me a campaign about women and stretch marks, and it just led to this greater acceptance of my body. And it was this moment where I was like, it's nothing that I've done wrong to my body. It's nothing wrong that I did. It happens, you know? It's normal. So, yeah. It all started with my boobs, and it's gonna end with my boobs. And even I got to have skin surgery for free, and they were gonna do it in 3 different sections. They were gonna start with my chest and my torso first, and I had 5 pounds of extra skin just around my belly. And so get to surgery day, and all I've wanted is to not have man boobs. Like, that is what has defined my body and my lack of being able to accept myself. And so get to surgery day, have the surgery, and I had done such a good job of losing weight that I stood the risk of losing too much blood if they did both my stomach and my chest at the same time. So we didn't do it. So I was left with 5 less pounds of skin around my stomach, but I still had my man boobs. And I was told right before I went into surgery, and it was the first thing that I asked about when I came out of surgery. And it was devastating. Like, I have always like tugged at shirts. I've always just worn like way too much clothes. Like, I was 350 pounds, I lived in Texas, and I would wear cardigan sweaters in the summertime, which is just insane. And just that inability to accept that, like, this is my body. And like, it's much more visible to someone, a person wearing a sweater in the dead of summer, than some man boobs. And if people do notice, it's like, oh, there's a fat man with boobs, thinking about myself again, doing whatever the hell I'm doing, you know? And just having it register in my mind that, like, it's not the only thing that other people think about. It's just wild. Like, no one really gives a shit about anyone else besides themselves that much. And if they do, it's for like seconds. So that's kind of helped me, like, bridge the gap between my body and my identity, and just being like, dude, you're worrying about yourself, no one else is. And if they are, then like, fuck it. It's just not worth this being uncomfortable all the time. Like, living in New Orleans now, it's just not fucking worth it. So I just let the titties fly. And it's hard. It's really hard to do. I've always hated the way I look, and the times that I appreciate how I look slowly started with my body, and I started to appreciate my masculine body and my muscles, especially when I started playing sports. And we would do this stretch where you sort of lean forward and you switch to stretch your calves, and you get to see this awesome, I'm gonna try and do it. So it's like this. So you lean forward and you put one leg behind the other, and this usually catches the sunlight really dramatically. And you see your thighs flex, which you usually don't see when you're walking, and it's really aesthetically pleasing. And you feel the muscles in your arm stretching to your back, and you feel this greater connectiveness to your whole body, and that's a great feeling. And that's when I started to appreciate my masculine body and my masculine jaw and my nose and the face, and that's when those are the times that I inhabit my body and I enjoy it. The other time that I inhabit my body is a lot more complicated because I hate it for exactly its masculine attributes. And that's when I'm trying to bend my sex or fit into a cross-dressing drag persona. And it's really hard with my shoulders and my waist and my masculine jaw and all of these features, except for my legs, all of these features that are really very masculine inhibit that. And when I'm trying on a really nice dress or trying on a wig that's purpose-built to hide my jaw and to cover my brow, or when I'm trying on makeup, you feel all of these artifices and you realize that you yourself are false. And I feel ugly and I feel hideous. And the times when it's best are when I can just look down and fool myself for a little bit, but then you feel the weight of the false breast forms, and you feel the weight of the makeup, and you realize that this isn't a Beyonce song where I just woke up like this. This is, I just spent half a day on this, and now I'm gonna stay home because going out is too much of a complicated persona to own. And I've suppressed it for a really long time, and I will probably continue to suppress it, except for now my wife wants me to work on expressing myself, which is very weighty. It's hard having experienced revealing this to people whom I care about deeply and having them be confused about my motivation. No matter how well I explain it, which is really minute, I'm a straight man who likes being a woman in form and in attitude. And there's a feminine aspect to my persona. And that's another thing that gets them tripped up, is I'm not me in a dress, I'm this female me. I've explained it to a couple of people and it's really blown up in my face. I've been in very wonderful, very trusting relationships that have been thrown back on me not soon after I've said that. And it's not enough to accept for people that I just like doing it. There's a read into it. So, yeah. It's a mess. So I'll be 48 on March 8th, and I was hurt in a skiing accident 2 weeks shy of my 17th birthday, February 22nd, 1982. So 31 years in kind of the paralysis realm of things. And you know, I can do stuff on my own. I roll around, I don't need an electric wheelchair. You know, I'm pretty much alive for considering 31 years, which is pretty good. You know, I think I look all right. But it was just sort of a basic breaking of the neck. And there are these cervical bones in your neck, and I crushed the 5th one, and shattered the 6th one. So where a break occurs is what determines what's going to happen. So in other words, my fingers don't work. If it had been half an inch lower, my fingers would work. If it had been in the middle of my back, I'd be paraplegic probably. But anything below the nipple line, I can't really feel, you know, sensation-wise, which is tricky because I look a lot more capable than I really am. But I think 85% of my body is paralyzed in one way or another, even internally. So there are incontinence issues, whatever. You know, I don't really have control over anything, really. And what you have to remember in my case, and this is probably what makes this interesting to you, is that I was 16, you know, going on 17, and I'd never gotten laid. I'd never driven a car. I'd never had a family. You know, I never did any of those things, and it pisses me off now because I was doing one life, and then it just stopped. And the amount of time it took for me to tumble down a hill, you know, and I look at it as if I was killed, and then reborn into this, you know, same person, but you evolve into a different. As you can imagine, I had to adjust. And so this is what I thought about this, is I can look in a mirror and think that I'm a beautiful person to look at, right? People say you're a good-looking guy, whatever, but that actually makes it worse, because if I were what people expect, if I were in sort of a different position, or if I was drooling, or if I had cerebral palsy, or something more of but if I present as charismatic, or interesting, or intelligent, it actually makes it harder, because the paradox is I can have all these attributes, but it doesn't matter. You see what I mean? So that was the killer for me until I was 40. And I was in relationships with women in their late 20s, early 30s who would be attracted initially and be willing to overlook this part, but this gets in the way. Especially because I'm not fertile. I'm not a baby producer, I'm not an earner. And that sounds sort of crude, but in the evolutionary scheme of things, whether you're willing to admit it or not, you know, all of the female people that I've been in relationships with have gone on to get married and have children. So that sort of hurt. But you know, it happens, and so I sort of keep to myself, and I don't really try and play the game anymore, you know, the hunting game. And sometimes people will come to me, but I don't know, I wouldn't know where to begin. So that's sort of the regret. My mother and I were discussing victims of attack, and she said, you know, when people look for a victim, they look to see that you're acting like a victim, that you walk like a victim, whatever that means, and you and I walk with purpose, and we have strength about us, and we don't look like victims. And I think I sort of always carried that with me, and thought that I was immune to anything like this ever happening, and obviously I'm not. My boyfriend came to stay with me 2 days after the attack for a week, which was really, really amazing. And he was fully prepared that there would be no sex. But I think I'm kind of a pusher, and I want to heal as fast as I possibly can, and I want to get back to me, so I wanted to. The first time we did it was very emotional, and I'll just tell you, he was on top. And I was envisioning that were I to have been raped, in that instance, that is the position I would have been in, because I was on my back at the point that he ran away. And so my reaction was to flip that over and take control of the situation sexually, which helped. But I think I'm needing to feel very safe and very comfortable, and not at all like just vanilla. I just need vanilla sex. But I think it's going to take a while to get back to me, and to feeling safe. I don't even feel safe during the day by myself, and I'm scared all the time. That makes me angry because I was never scared before, you know, probably to a fault. But it seems New Orleans is trying to teach me a couple of lessons. I'm not Superman, and I need to be more conscious of my surroundings, and I need to be more aware that I'm able to be hurt. It's strong. My body is strong. American attitudes about death and about the human body, both living and dead, need to change, but that's major to me, is this terror of decomposition. You know, I think it goes hand in hand with the terror of aging. And there's this obsession with mortality and eternal life and eternal longevity within that I think is demented and wrong. I mean, I certainly think that one should maintain one's body so that the maximum enjoyment can be taken from life, but I think that at the same time a certain acceptance or even a sort of appreciation for the processes of aging need to become more central to our upbringing. There's this erasing of the elderly that I see taking place, and people are living, some people are living longer and healthier lives than ever before, but at the same time there's so little representation of what an aged face looks like, of what an aged body looks like that is separate from a pathetic image or a horrific image or an image of burden. And that's very problematic because age comes to us all, as does death, and it's inevitable. And I think that we will forever be sort of tortured souls if we can't learn to embrace some of that. I love all all the existential philosophers, Kierkegaard or Camus or Sartre, like, life is inherently meaningless. That's why it's like our purpose to give it meaning, And all of this like ego, or even this sort of, oh, it's just me, or why is this important, or oh, it's just my body, it's not gonna last. I mean, it is, because that's all you are. So it's like vitally important to you. And I mean, Camus has the exact point. Like, the only real philosophical question is whether or not to commit suicide. So like, if you're deciding to not commit suicide and like get up in the morning, whatever your reason, there you go, right? So like, if you love music, if that's your thing, then like, there you go. That's your religion. That's your reason to live and to like do what you do. But I mean, everything is eventually just gonna turn to dust. We're all mortal. We have to grapple with that. And so I think that's what's so beautiful and like romantic about the whether it's the mandala, like the Tibetan mandala that they make in the sand and then it sort of blows away, or even a live theatrical performance, right? Like, it's performed one time live and then it's sort of gone. It's in the wind, and whoever was there to like see it and experience it, like, that's what makes it beautiful and valuable. And this body that won't be the same tomorrow or in a year from now. Like, this is me, and it can do all this sort of like incredible stuff of being able to see and perceive and sense and contemplate and like feel, and so that's it. And this sense of like Brahman, right? Like this little shard of God that's in all of us. And I mean, do we call that the miracle of life? Like these crazy human beings that are just a collection of cells and tissues and impulses, but can do all this creative, terrible stuff. Like, I think that's beautiful and romantic and tragic and hilarious and meaningful. And so this is our sort of like fleeting moment when we get to walk the earth and inherit, and our spirit inherits something, and we aren't alive until we take that first breath. And when we take that last breath, we sort of just disappear. And everything between that is this beautiful romantic play that we get to fill with like whatever we do. And all of our experiences have that value. Your heart. Your heart will beat over 1 million times in one lifetime. I'm sure you'll find someone who won't mind skipping one for you. Your left lung was made smaller than your right lung just to make room for that very heart inside of you. Your stomach needs to produce a new layer of mucus every 2 weeks or it would digest itself. Listen, never become complacent living life on a shelf. There's a reason for every limb and interaction body. My God created like instrument. Every year, 98% of the atoms in your body are replaced. You were born with 300 bones. When you get to be an adult, you have 206. You need to grow the fuck up. You need to grow out of things. You need to keep on living. There are too many more interesting lessons. 50 million blood cells are destroyed in the human body every second. If your body can get over it, you can get over that last relationship. You gotta believe in your body. You gotta believe in faith. And you must believe in luck. The surface of human skin is 6.5 square feet, so you must toughen up the body. The body contains enough iron to make a 3-inch nail, sulfur to kill fleas on an average dog, carbon to make 500 pencils, fat to make 7 bars of soap, phosphorus to make 2,200 match heads, and enough water to fill a 10-gallon tank. Fuck a superhero. You are fucking human. You are incredible. You are a valuable life force. You are a walking Picasso. You are creatively created. You are handmade like praying. You are a piece of the Creator. You human you. And if you never knew that that was enough to just be, well then you obviously don't know a goddamn thing.